Cellmates, written by Sjanevardsson. The walls, floor, and ceiling were painted in the precise shade of pale green-grey that led thinking beings to boredom and introspection. Those with a reduced capacity for introspection, however, would find the color maddening after some time. Those unfortunate souls ended up in solitary. Troy was not a large man. He stood 164 centimeters and weighed in at just over 54 kilograms. He had no fat under his warm brown skin, though to hide his thin muscles, making him look almost starved. As such, his friends offered advice for his time behind bars. That advice was based on fictions and stereotypes. Join up factions like the Sons of Adam. You can remove the tattoos when you get out. Try to beat up the biggest guy there on the first day. Just keep your head down and don't look anyone in the eye. None of the advice was useful. There was no way to join or even find a faction in the prison, and a fight would just add time to his sentence. With meals taken in the cell, delivered by guards, and rotating schedule for yard time in one of the 60 exercise yards, Troy guessed that two prisoners might encounter each other twice a year at most, unless they were cellmates. It was while he was contemplating the isolation of the prison that the electronic lock on the door buzzed. Troy looked up from where he lay in the bottom bunk. A guard looked into the cell, then turned to the hulking shadow behind him. "In here!" He stepped out of the way, and a second guard followed, an orc carrying a rolled-up mattress, blanket, pillow, space uniform, and a laundry bag. The dun-skinned orc with ivory tusks and too many scars to count was easily twice Troy's weight, and head and shoulders taller. "Top bunk, inmate," the first guard said. "Are you sure, boss?" the orc asked. "I'm pretty heavy." The guard raised a stun baton. "I meant when I said top bunk." Troy rolled out of his bunk and retreated to the far side of the cell. He controlled his face, hiding the fear that gripped him. The orc nodded at the guard, and then with a leap landed on his back on the top bunk, which didn't let even a squeak at the abuse. "Top bunk it is, boss." Troy didn't want to turn his back on the orc, but he felt sudden urgent need to urinate. He decided to do it while the guards were there in the cell, to ensure his back was protected. "Really, inmate?" one of the guards asked. "You couldn't wait for us to leave?" Troy finished up and flushed the commode. "No, sir, I couldn't." The other guard said, "When you gotta go, Stevens. Iron Tooth here is your new SETI. Show him the ropes and make sure he follows the rules. He fucks up, it's on you." With that, the guards left, and the door locked behind them. Troy returned to his bunk and lay down, his eyes watching every move of the huge orc. The time for introspection had passed. Troy was gripped with the alert focus that comes with adrenaline. They ate their dinner in silence. The guard that retrieved their empty trays told Troy to show the orc how to properly make up his bunk. Troy put in his most confident face and talked the orc through the steps to make his bunk. He was an attentive student and picked it up right away. Troy fell asleep with the feeling that the orc could attack at any time, but it would result in a trip to the hospital, and at least he'd see something different. He woke up in the morning to subtle movements of the orc shifting around on the solid bunk above him. He sat up and coughed. At some point, he would have to turn his back on his cellmate, and what happened then would be anyone's guess. He stood and looked at the orc sitting cross-legged on his bunk, dark circles under his golden eyes. Troy sighed. "Did you get any sleep last night?" "Why, I was waiting for you to attack." Troy laughed so hard he had difficulty calming down to breathe. When he saw that only made the orc more nervous, he collected himself. "Troy Stevens," he said. "What's your name other than inmate Irontooth?" "Iron Took, then Iron Took," the orc said. "Not Iron Tooth." "Yeah, the guards aren't all the sharpest tools in the shed." "What made you think that I would attack someone your size?" Troy leaned against the wall. "I thought that you were in the Sons of Adam, and I thought that you would shank me in the middle of the night," Dan said. "What gave you that idea?" Then cleared his throat. When you took a person from me and the guards, like we were just marking your territory. It's like you had an advantage of some sort." Troy laughed again. "The only reason I did that was because I didn't want to turn my back on you while we were alone. I was scared that you would decide that I was in the way and would break me in half." "But you went right to sleep," Dan said. "Not the actions of someone scared. I thought that meant that you felt well protected." "It's more than I figured that if you were going to jump me, I'd either die and not know about it, or I'd end up in the hospital and get a look at a different room. Anyway, Then, I am not of those assholes. Assuming that I am because I'm a human would be like me assuming that you're a gangbanger because you're an orc. You aren't, are you? You don't look like a gang type. Then Chucky said, I'm a firefighter, he said. That's the closest to a gang I ever got. What landed you here? Possession with intent to sell, but it's not like it's true. Den stretched out on the bunk. I carried an elf out of a fire, laid her on a stretcher. And a bag of pills fell out of her pocket. I didn't know what was in it, so I picked it up and put it on the stretcher with her. One of the cops insane assumed it was mine, and the public defender was useless. What about you? Old news. Troy sat down next to the wall. You heard of the Salem 7? Den propped himself up on one elbow. That group that went to prison over the voting thing? I thought they were all orcs. They were, and their sentences were vacated by Parliament after 2 years, when the High Court finally decided that the Voting Restrictions Act they were protesting was in fact unconstitutional. So, what does that have to do with you? Den asked. Troy chuckled. In a stunning display of racism, the 4 elves, 3 humans, and 2 dwarves on the High Court decided that 7 orcs couldn't organize it on their own and were following orders from someone smarter somewhere. I was the unlucky bastard lawyer that they set their sights on. I did some pro bono work for the group. Was at the protest and had assisted by printing posters and sending emails for them. But the court decided that I was the mastermind that ground the business of the court to a halt for an entire week. Den sat bolt upright. They what? Orcs are too dumb to protest without a human leading them? What the hell? I suppose they think OLM is led by a human or an elf or something too. Troy shook his head. Keep in mind, this was 20 years ago. If they're out, Den asked, why are you still here? I wasn't included in the Salem 7 trial. Instead, I was charged with conspiracy to subvert government functions and given the maximum sentence of 40 years with no possibility of parole. I'll be 72 when I get out, Troy said and stretched. The lead judge of my case called me a traitor to my country and race, before instructing the court reporter to strike that comment. Damn! So the lead judge was a human? The orc asked. No, Judge Ellen Starcher, elf, Troy trailed off. The new lady elf on the High Court, Den asked. The one that everyone says should retire. Yeah, that's the one. Den leaned forward. So, what happens now? Assuming you don't break me in half, and I'm not planning on shanking you, or anyone for that matter, Troy chuckled. Now that we're both over being scared of each other, I guess we do our time. And, if you want, I can help work on your appeal. End of story. Story number 2. Where did you get the idea for this? Written by SpeedHump23. After some struggle, the humans have deep space travel capabilities. They have spent the next 100 years exploring the galaxy. Other races they contact are amazed that they have made it to them. Maybe 1 in 1,000 races make it to deep space. Space is dangerous. Things are out in the void that can kill ships. The humans always smile and pat their pocket AIs whenever asked how they did it. Captain Flex Ress of the human DSF Columbali Deep Space Freighter had just landed on Proxima B and was talking to the owner of the capital city's largest airfield, while waiting for the planet's leading council to arrive. Pox B leaders had been communicating with the Terrans ever since the Columbali had made orbit, while the Terran ship waited permission to land. Trade would be a major aspect. But the primary mission of the strip was to help the inhabitants of Proxima B to get into space. The leadership of Proxima B were having trouble understanding why anyone would be so nice to them. As with most planets-locked races, the Prox Bs had run into the same list of issues that kept most other races planet-locked. Once they got rockets to actually get into space, they hit issue after issue, and had trouble combating them before dying. From the green xenomorph gremlins, who floated through space and attached themselves to ships, well, mostly harmless in great numbers, they would block viewports, engine exhausts, etc., to the long-dead xenophobic builders, an advanced race which had made it to space, only to be the most xenophobic beings in the galaxy. Their robot ships were nicknamed the Berserkers by the Terrans, for some ancient reason, and tended to try wipe any new race they encountered. Luckily for the Proxies, the Berserker ships had just entered the system, had been there at the same time as the Terran merchant fleet. The Berserker likely did not even get a message off that it was under attack before it was dead. The Terran missile system had the range and stealth abilities to take out a berserker before it even knew it was under fire. When asked about the extraordinary missiles launched by the merchants, which seemed like a battleship weapon, not a trader's one, Flex Ress just patted his pocket AI and mentioned Ghost Riders. Over the next 100 years, the Proxima B Society was carefully and helpfully raised to an equal technical level to that of the Terran Alliance. Anytime an issue arose which looked set to crush their advancement, the Terrans would offer a few solutions already set out and easy to follow and implement. At no time did the Terran Alliance enforce or impose any of the fixes, neither did they charge for the information. After Proxima B Society finally got to an equal footing to that of the Terrans, the head of the Alliance contacted the leading council of Hellworld, the local name of Proxima, now that they were spread out on a few planets in nearby systems, and offered them full and equal access to the secret to their success. Proxima B had an entertainment industry. They had artists, musicians, and story writers. The stories tended to deal with issues on the planet, such as building houses in the great flowing and sand lands. Their music on how to find love and the moon was hidden by clouds. But they had nothing as detailed or imaginative as that of the Terran race. It seemed that everything that any race would ever encounter on their homeworld or in the struggle to reach space, even anything needed to emerge victorious in battle, the Terrans had written numerous stories about. They did not stop there, though. Each story had then been analyzed, then students studied them, and even in-depth fanfics, an old Earth word for some sort of learned thesis, on the subjects were written. The stories had been dissected and analyzed to the point where the answers to meet any possible issues had been worked out well in advance. The system was not stagnant, though, with new stories and studies being added on an almost daily basis. The pocket AIs carried by all humans had this information ready at a moment's notice. The analysis of thousands of generations, experts in fields many did not even know they needed, was ready to help. From how to deal with pesky green gremlins, such as using electrified hulls which repel them when they try to latch onto the ship, an idea credited to something called Churchill statue, to things that look out for when landing a ship on an asteroid, such as do not land inside a cave on an asteroid before you check if it's not alive. The Council of Proxima B were amazed at the concept of this guide, and were very grateful to be given access to them on top of all the other help they had received. The news that they could add their own stories and learned lessons to the network was also appreciated. Looking at his new AI, Councilman Hurt looked at the plastic container for the guide and asked the question, "Why does it have 'Don't Panic' on the cover?" End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.